if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about what kind of did elevate you a little bit in the public eye, right? The Saddam interrogation, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
And, so I mean, I was watching some of your interviews and things like that, but you were in the FBI for 5 years at that point?
Just under 5.
And how did you feel in that moment? Did you feel ready for that, or was it like, what is going on here? Isn't there somebody that's been on for 10 years or maybe that wants to do this? Like, was it that, or did you walk in and you knew that you were the man for the job?
Oh no! When I got that call, I was scared.
Yeah,
crapless.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. It was, So when they first told me that I had been selected to interrogate Saddam Hussein, it was a really, really scary feeling. More so because I knew what it meant, and the responsibility that came with that. I was going to be representing the FBI, and I definitely did not want to be the one to let the FBI down or fail to meet expectations. Those kinds of things were more at what I was.
It wasn't about him.
No,
it was about
and also
a little bit about him.
You're Middle Eastern.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, when I first thought about it, he was larger than life. He brought this country to 2 wars. Watched him on the world stage for a number of years. It's like saying, hey, you're gonna interview the president of the United States. Initially there's going to be those reservations, those fears, those anxiety. Once I started, it's just like, getting ready for a jiu-jitsu match, right? When you're waiting, it's the anxiety. But once you start really, all of that is gone. So when I started preparing for the interrogation, developing my interview plan, all of those things, those thoughts immediately went away. And then I started to think
focus
about
on what you were good at. They picked you for a reason, right?
Yeah. And then it becomes, like anything else, right? You're in the middle of it. You're not thinking about everything else. And I really actually equate it to jiu-jitsu. It's strategy. I'm sitting here. I'm trying to predict what move he's going to make. How am I going to sweep him? Yeah. How am I going to, dominate?
Let him get the sweep.
Yeah. So it's a mental chess game, or I like to call it intellectual combat.
Yeah.
It's my mind against the other person's, and one's going to win, one's going to lose, and who's ever better, who's ever more prepared, who's ever stronger is going to win at the end of the day. And that's what, that's one of the reasons why I was really drawn to interrogations, and I found that out, not only did it appeal to me that, I was pretty good at it.
Was there a point where you were like, okay, I'm like days, weeks, months that you were like, okay, I'm comfortable now. This is a normal day at the office now.
With him an interrogation?
No, with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll tell you, my biggest fear, what really scared me was going all the way there, being selected, all of this preparation, flying to Iraq, which was very, very difficult because it's not easy to get to Iraq in the middle of a war and those kinds of things. Get there and have all of this stuff done, walk in and say, how you doing? I'm George Piro. I'm here to talk to you. And he goes, get out. Yeah. Then I'd have to turn around, get back on that plane, make that long, sad journey home. And
hold on, you gotta eat Subway at BIOP before you leave.
So that was my biggest fear. So for me, my first goal was just to get him to talk to me.
Let his guard down a little bit.
Second one was to get him to ask me to come back. Third was to get him to ask me to go outside. So it's
can you explain that? You really he had to be kind of invite you in a little bit?
Well, no, it wasn't necessarily invite me in, but I wanted him to actually ask me. So here's what happened. Our first interaction, he was sick. He asked to see a doctor. The doctor only spoke English. Saddam only spoke Arabic. I was in a position, and there was really no one else with the clearance to translate for the doctor, because where Saddam was being held was highly classified.
Okay.
So they said, hey, you're stuck.
So you were that conduit to some things that he needed.
Between him and getting the medical attention that he needed.
And he was in a vulnerable position where he needed you, essentially.
Well, developing that rapport, as we talked about, and the dependency and all of those kinds of things. So at the conclusion of that, I wanted him to say, hey, come back, because
Okay,
I want you to come back.
Yeah.
So it was more about, him mentally making that
Almost
gesture.
and kind of needing you,
Yeah,
like, like
exactly.
you need, now I know that I need this guy, and this is the guy that I want.
I think
to come back.
eventually you come to terms in what type of position you're in.
Yeah.
And then it's
So,
like the 5 stages
yeah.
of grief, I would think. Like at first it's like denial, and then you're angry, and then you're like, oh, okay.
But when you think about it, it's more about passive submission to authority, right? So initially he was very, very resistant to being told what to do. He was very guarded. He was, he didn't want to, answer a lot of questions and everything like that, which is, you expect that.
Yeah.
But what, over time, I just wanted him to slowly and passively submit to my authority, my position, and, ask me to come back. Another thing that, we did was we controlled time. Like, so he wanted to know what time it was all the time. The only person that had a watch was me.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to get the time, he could only ask one person for that. And I would gladly provide it to him and everything like that. What he didn't realize is that over time, he was passively submitting to my authority.
Did you give him the real time, or you said you controlled time?
I gave him the real time, and I would show him my watch, which would drive him nuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he was realizing how long he had been in there. Is that what you mean? Or
Well, yeah. So if you've gone through SEER training, I know you were in the military, right? Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. One of the things that they tell you is you cannot give up time, right? If you give up, wanting to know what time it is, what day it is, how long you've been in captivity, you're basically giving up. So we couldn't prevent telling him what time it was because he had to pray and things like that.
Okay.
But we
Which
wanted
way was Mecca?
Yeah,
Usually
but we
spray
wanted
painted on
to
the floor.
control how he got that and kind of draw him into asking.
okay.
Because initially he was very defiant. He didn't want anything. He didn't ask for anything, right? So that's when I talk about, that chess game, the
okay.
intellectual combat, you
Wow.
know. So getting him to ask what time it is, it seems like a very simple gesture, but it's not because he's asking.
Yeah. Wow.
So I show him what time it is, and I tell him what time it is, and
That would get him. What would get him angry? That he would realize how much time he was there, or that
No.
he had to ask.
He had to ask.
That the
And
fact that he had to ask.
he would say,
Okay.
That guy never asked for anything ever.
Yeah.
Like he
and then
ran.
he would say, "How is it that the greatest military in the world can't afford watches for their soldiers? Because none of the soldiers that guarded him, none of the MPs,
Well, you can't
the
wear
medical
anything.
staff,
on purpose.
on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
Right.
name tags, no patches.
So he could only ask one person.
Wow.
So and again, what he didn't realize is he was becoming more and more dependent on me.
Yeah.
Dependent on me for time, dependent on me for translation, for medical attention, dependent on me to help him with his dietary needs, dependent on me to just for social
Yeah.
interaction. We all have to have human interaction.
Yeah.
When it's funneled and controlled, it really creates that environment where it helps develop that rapport and that.
What was your background at that point? Had you been an interrogator?
Oh,
Or-
yes.
So you now in the 5 years at the FBI or in other parts of law enforcement, the military, you had been an interrogator?
No, so I was when I was a detective, I worked homicide, so I had done a number of interrogations.
It's not
So-
your first rodeo.
And then I found that it's something that appealed to me, kind of like jiu-jitsu, and then I was pretty good at it. So I devoted a lot of time
You smile a lot when you say.
I mean, it's
a different smile than when you talked about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen something different when
Yeah.
you're talking about that. Like
That's
you
my
enjoyed
first.
it.
That's my first passion,
okay. There
my
you go.
first love.
It's like a shitty job, but I can see how that could be.
There's nothing better than when you're interviewing somebody and they've been denying that they were responsible for that shooting, for that murder, for that crime, and over time, and then when they actually finally admit to it,
Yeah.
it's an incredibly.
You ever hit him with the, are you a murderer? No. Does your mom know you're a murderer? And they're like, yeah, no,
I'm a little smoother than that.
I'm listening to you, and I'm saying this in all seriousness now, and I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking of masterclass. Have you seen those masterclass like videos? Like you can register for a masterclass and learn from somebody
on like
who's done
poker,
that.
and they'll have like
Yeah,
Phil
like-
Ivey or
like
or a
speaking.
chef, and they'll have Gordon Ramsay.
You haven't seen that? You haven't
yes.
seen that?
It's a
It's
paid
like the
subscription.
cooking
I'm
one,
looking
not
at
the
you going,
poker one.
I'm like, why haven't I seen you in a masterclass?
you're a poker player?
Legitimately, I'm not bullshit. I'm like, this is like, you should be doing a masterclass. Like, masterclass, reach out to this man. Like this is
Masterclass. Reach
yeah,
out to
yeah.
this
I mean,
man.
and then people, you're teaching your subject, and people would register for the class, and then see it
believe
online.
it or not,
and it's recorded.
it has a much broader application than just interrogating a suspect, right? it's one of those skills or that art that we're really losing as a society because we've become so dependent on phones and social media. Is this that interaction?
We talked about it before.
Engagement.
It's like I love. We started like this.
Yes.
We started with at least five people, and then it went to Zoom, and it was like it was good. And we got to get different names that we might not have gotten on because they were in other parts. Sometimes they were in Florida and locally, but because of COVID. And then it turned more into the Zoom thing. And that's good, but I like this.
This is the best.
It's like I like the looking somebody in the face and
it's textile.
Yeah. It's a different dynamic. So,
it's also there's no lag.
Tactile.
Yeah.
And then from an interrogator's perspective, I read off of my, the person I'm interrogating. I can quickly adjust. I can, get a perspective and take it in that direction.
I'm gonna be so self-conscious now for the rest of the interview. Like, don't rub your nose. Don't touch your nose.
This.
I think it's a good
skill. If you really do play
for
poker, please invite me.
It's a good skill to be a job interviewer. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So where does that take? So we were talking about the time and Saddam Hussein. So can you tell us a little bit more about that time with him?
Yeah, so it ended up being 7 months. So to date, it's still the longest interrogation in FBI history, and it's the first interrogation of a former head of state to be conducted by the FBI.
Wow.
So I spent about 2 months just building rapport, right? I wanted to get a true understanding of who he was, his thought process, his moods, his perceptions, those kinds of things, because those were going to be really important as we talked about or got to the point where we're going to talk about the key things, which was Iraq's WMD program and Iraq's alleged relationship with Al-Qaeda, leading up to the 9/11 attacks. So those were the things that we wanted to know. The thing about those were, if I got them on day one or I got them a year later, their value or how important they were wasn't going to change. It was just getting that information.
Get there,
yeah. Wow. So about 2 months on nothing but building rapport with him. And then only after I felt that I had developed that strong rapport where it would be hard for him, not impossible, but hard for him to say, George, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Hit the road, right? So once I felt that I had developed that connection and that rapport, then I kind of started to work on, changing his kind of mindset and thought process. As an interrogator, some of the things that I need to develop early on and during that rapport building phase is I got to figure out what you value in life. What means to you the most, right? So just here in a couple of minutes, now, you've repeatedly talked about, your lovely wife and everything like that. So if I wanted to leverage anything, I would be talking about that, and the impact that would have on your life and, the direction that she's taking you in and everything like that. For Saddam, it was his legacy and his place in history. So the next phase worked on...
Not a selfish man at all.
Yeah, very, very selfish, right? So talked about that, and I did a comparison against historical leaders in Iraq and how they're viewed, respected, admired, accomplishments, and then looked at his and how is the world going to remember him to get him to really start accepting some responsibility or some criticism and kind of changing that perspective. And then I got lucky, like the old saying, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right? He got sick. I had to take him to the hospital, and that experience really, really brought us together. And what I mean by that is that we had to fly on a Black Hawk to get to the green zone to where the hospital was. And we're at Cropper, which is at the airport. So it's about a 35-minute helicopter ride. As you know, a combat takeoff on a Black Hawk and a
straight up, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go.
It's almost like a roller coaster ride. Yeah. I mean, most
also
people
on a regular, just a C-130 or C-17, they just freaking go, wow.
So I didn't realize he was afraid of flying. And he's blindfolded, shackled. So when he's
blindfolded, he can't know where he is.
Yeah, exactly. Because all prisoners are transported that way.
He knows the country pretty well.
So when we took off, he started to have a panic attack. So the only person next to him is me, and the only thing I could do is for 35 minutes was try to comfort him. And I'm whispering to him in his ear, and I'm trying to really calm him and everything like that. And during the entire time in the hospital, I never left his side. That had a really lasting
imprinted
impact
on him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it got our relationship got so tight that it became hard for him to lie to me.
Yeah.
And only then did we start talking about WMD and Al Qaeda and things like that. So that was about month 5. And then once we got what we needed from him, he was turned over to the Iraqis so that they could prosecute him for his atrocities.
Wow. In that time, do you start to develop feeling, like, I don't know a better word, like feeling for that person? Do you like empathy, I guess, right? Do you start to empathize with him and feel bad for him? And, almost, is there a real friendship that can evolve from a situation like that? Like, he's a horrible person, but
for me, thankfully, I never developed those feelings.
Does that
in that
happen?
relationship.
I mean, can that happen?
That can
Almost
happen.
like what's that
it's
syndrome?
It's called Stockholm syndrome.
Like Stockholm syndrome, right? So
Yes.
you're almost.
So I didn't have that.
No, okay, all right. What you said, we develop a relationship, and the way you're saying
there's a couple of reasons why that didn't happen for me, and it really helped me. One, again, I understood why I was there. In the FBI, we have a very popular saying: successes belong to the organization, failures belong to the individual. If you do something good in the FBI, nobody cares, because that's the norm and that's the expectation. You do something bad, you become famous.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be the one to.
That is funny.
I didn't want to be the one to let the FBI down. So the pressure was on to make sure I met the expectations and the standards of the FBI. Second, when you're reading what mustard and sarin gas does to women, children, the elderly, which were the majority of its victims, and you see a really clear understanding of the atrocities that took place while he was the dictator and things like that, it's easy to stay very...
draw that line.
And then going back to, I think you got the sense I'm a competitive person. And, for me, and that... was not lost on me. At the end, there was going to be a winner and there was going to be a loser.
Yeah, and it was going to be him.
There's also no doubt going into that interrogation that was a bad guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like normally, like let's say you said you were a detective, right?
Yeah.
You might have been doing an interrogation on an innocent person, and I'm sure you've found innocent people, and we've all met people wrong place, right time. It's like, bro, you look real guilty right now.
Yeah.
And then you hear it out, and you find definitive proof that they're not. But
I would have whispered in his ear on that helicopter, "You fucked now."
Yeah. I got what I need to know.
Well,
but having said all that, he was a very charismatic, very charming person, incredible sense of humor. So having to spend 5 to 7 hours with him every single day was easy because it was enjoyable in this sense, right?
So
very, very
Ted
tough.
Bundy.
Exactly.
Dynamic.
But
Most
on the other hand,
psychopaths are.
it wasn't very difficult for me to spend that kind of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said all that, right, when he was executed, I was given the opportunity to go to his execution, but I passed on that, and I'm really glad I did. I did my job. I met my responsibility. I represented the FBI. I performed my mission, but I didn't want to be there.
No regrets about not doing that.
Absolutely no regrets. I'm so glad I didn't do that.
You didn't have to go to the graduation.
That's no fun, man.
So how did things change when you came back? I mean, it's obviously a career changing event, right? Where did you, once you came, did you come back? Did you immediately come down to Miami where they're like, give this guy Miami,
No.
Pizza party?
What what happens next? You're done with the interrogation. And
I get, so I make fun of it, but it's a great representation about the FBI and how the expectations is excellence all the time, right? So I spent nearly 8 months with Saddam Hussein in a war zone, under the most austere conditions, right? When I land at the airport, there's nobody there to pick me up.
That's what I like. That's what I like.
Right. So what? You interrogated one of the most brutal dictators of our modern time. So what?
Yeah.
Who cares? Right. So I came back and I went.
Was that a little on purpose? Was not on purpose?
No, not on purpose. But it's
let's
just,
remind
it's
him.
normal.
No, okay.
So I come back and I go right back to work. Yeah. So after that, I spent 6 months authoring the prosecutive report that was used by the Iraqis to prosecute him. And then after that, I was up for rotation to go to Afghanistan. So from Iraq, I went and did a combat tour in Afghanistan, and enjoyed that.
So not a lot of fanfare around this.
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
If anything, I would expect your colleagues would be like, I could have done that in less time.
Did you have any of that? Like, really? Did you really?
What took you so? Yeah, like what took you so
No,
long?
thankfully I didn't have any of that.
A lot of ball busting.
I mean, honestly, everybody treated me the same. It's like another day
That's
at
a
the
good thing.
office.
I mean, that's
Gold
a
star.
good thing.
Yeah.
So when did you?
It's funny.
when
I
did you
got an award. I got a big award. I got back then there was cheesy envelopes. Those were like the envelopes.
Manila, like a manila envelope?
Yeah, that you do from one department to another.
Mm-hmm.
So my award came in a cheesy envelope. They dropped it off on my desk. I opened it up. I got this certificate and this, check, bonus check for it.
Yeah.
You deserve it, bro. You deserve it.
Yeah.
Good work.
So no fanfare, which is,
Yeah.
I was
good.
okay with it.
Yeah, I think
That's
like in that
actually
moment. Yeah.
that's actually the answer I expected to all of your questions. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it is, man. And like in those like top tier communities, like I was never like SF or anything like that, but I was in the 82nd Airborne for 8 years, and so like we worked like hand in hand. We were always like the outer cordon for those type of people and those type of groups, and it was like it's exactly like you said. If you did your job, if anything, you got grief for doing a good job to just like always keep you like even keel.
Yeah.
It was never.
I mean, that's the expectation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you did your job.
Excellence is the expectation. So if you do an excellent job, they're like, well,
That's normal.
that's normal. That's what
So
you're.
how long were you?